We have to talk about this pager attack. So let's just start by you telling us what you know so far. Pagers exploded all over southern Lebanon. These Hezbollah members had them. Just can you tell us what happened, what you know so far?
Okay, yeah. The last I heard, the explosions left 11 dead. That's a figure that'll probably continue to climb, and approximately 3,000 injured. Um, yeah, many of the victims were members of Hezbollah. Not all of them were. There were two children among the dead. They may have been family members of Hezbollah. Now, it's important to remember that Hezbollah is not just a military organization; it's a civilian organization. Like Hamas is. So when you're saying you're killing, or targeting Hezbollah members, it could be military commanders, but then also it can just be. It certainly could be civilians, and there's certainly many civilians among the victims. I don't know what the proportion is exactly. But it was widespread. We're talking over 3,000 people injured. It, it's it was said, I don't know, on what this is based, but that there were 5,000 of these pagers. Initially the thought was that maybe that something was done to make the battery explode. But then later reports came in and made clear that that just wasn't possible, especially with this model, that some sort of explosive had been implanted. And then the question is, where was this explosive embedded in the device? One report claimed that it was in the production phase, and then others suggested that it was somewhere in the shipment process. So that's just not clear at this point. The company that makes these pagers is a Taiwanese company, but everyone seems to agree that actually these pagers, this batch, was produced in Europe by a factory in Europe. So either almost certainly it was Mossad that was behind this. So Mossad either had the explosive embedded somewhere in the production process in Europe, or somehow managed to waylay, we'll say, the shipment and embed the process and then continue. It seems like either way, whether it happened during shipment or production, there had to be some sort of inside cooperation. I don't see how otherwise how it would be possible. So this actually, again, this is a major blow to Hezbollah. Many of their people were injured, along with many other, Lebanese. It certainly disrupted their communication systems, at least in the short run. I think they probably have backups. It's interesting that they use pagers, but it's not because they're poor and they can't afford cell phones or anything like that. But I think they've found that pagers actually are more resistant to, disruption by Israeli electronic warfare, and just like the Israelis find it more difficult to disrupt this pager-based communication system. Apparently, there was a similar attack attempted, actually not against Hezbollah but against Hamas in 2009. But Hamas detected, noticed that there was something wrong with the devices and raised the alarm before anything could happen. I've seen that report in at least a couple of places. Now this raises, it raises all kinds of issues. Of course it's hardly what you would call a targeted assassination. It was widespread. It killed all kinds of people. Hamas military, but not Hamas, but rather Hezbollah military, but also many other civilians, both Hezbollah and non-Hezbollah, children and adults. It did severely injure actually the Iranian ambassador to Lebanon. I think that he's going to lose sight in one eye, at the very least. I saw one report that said that actually shortly before the explosion occurred, the pager beeped, and that was which caused many people to raise the pager, up to their face, and that increased the severity of the injuries. Now, that hasn't been confirmed, but I saw that in one place. It's certainly possible. Well, again, this raises a lot of issues. Was this something that this something that was scheduled? If it was, like they intended for this to happen yesterday, when it did happen, then that suggests that an invasion by Israel is imminent, because it's not unusual to attack, an enemy's communication system, prior to an all-out invasion. I remember the U.S. doing that in Iraq and in Afghanistan. They would first take out these communication towers, relay towers, and so forth, try to utterly destroy the enemy's communication system before launching the greater attack. But there is another story out there that say that, well, that's not the case. Actually, this was the Israelis were forced to do this prematurely. They were planning to do this actually during the course of a war. You can see how devastating it could be right in the midst of a war. But they somehow got news that some Hezbollah members had noticed that something was fishy. And so the alarm was about to be raised. And so they immediately sent out the signal to cause the explosions. And they did it earlier than they wanted to do it. So, hopefully we'll get some clarity on that. But those are the two possibilities. Now, there's this question also, was there U.S. involvement or Western involvement, and at least Western foreknowledge of this? I saw that, I don't know, how important this is, but that, apparently is some sort of electronic warfare aircraft. One actually belonging to the U.S., another belonging to the U.K., were observed right off the coast of Lebanon shortly before this happened. Now, I don't know if that really has anything to do with it. I don't really see the connection there, but some people say that there's possibly a connection. But something that's a little bit more suspicious in my mind anyway, doesn't prove anything, but you have to say it's suspicious. It's just 10 days ago, American University asked their staff to turn in their pagers to get replaced by new pagers. And so some people are
in Beirut.
Yeah, in Beirut.
Okay.
Right. Now, these kind of things happen. They said I read the message that they sent out and said that, we're improving our system and upgrading it. And, so we want you to, right, in the next few days, turn in your pager. And maybe that's all it was. It could be completely innocent. But you just have to wonder,
Right. But why do university professors in Beirut even have pagers? I mean, who's using pagers?
Did. Yeah, they did. I don't know why.
The last time I saw pagers was yours when I was like 8 years old.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I had one like a good 25 years ago, right?
Right. So is this, you I think are classifying this attack as kind of almost state-sponsored terrorism, that it was kind of widespread, it was... Yeah, well, is that fair to say? I mean,
it's kind of par for the course for Israel. I mean, the truth is, like, if you look at a lot of the operations, I don't think it was actually probably less inhumane or less barbaric than much of what we've seen in Gaza. And many of those attacks deliberately target civilians. I don't think this was deliberately targeting civilians. They were more interested in getting Hezbollah, and they did get a fair number of them. It's just that there was a lot of collateral damage. That's a euphemism for, the killing and maiming of civilians, and that they knew that was going to happen. But Israel has never shown any concern for that. I mean,
right. Yeah, I mean, my initial reaction when I saw this was, I saw the videos of it, people in grocery stores shopping and people driving their cars, and you're like, my God. And I immediately jumped to, this is Israel going overboard, that they have no regard for life because of what we've seen they do in Gaza. But then I tried to take a step back and look at it like, okay, let me try to remove myself from everything that's happening in Gaza and what I've seen, because I have these emotional responses to whatever Israel does. I just immediately think that everything's wrong. But then I'm like, well, in a sense, it actually is quite surgical that these were given to Hezbollah members only. And if they are in a war with Hezbollah, is this a legitimate attack? So I don't know where I
Yeah,
stand fully on
right.
this.
Yeah,
Like
right. It's
I, I
not. Yeah, you can't describe it as surgical or, um, but yeah, compared to so much of what I think that the target was Hezbollah, and in particular the military commanders. But they did it knowing that they were going to kill a lot of civilians in the
right,
process.
but
Again, it's like Edward Snowden pointed out. Look, people are driving cars when this happens. Whatever. It's not like. When they pressed the button, they knew there would be hundreds and hundreds of civilians, if not thousands of civilian injuries, and we know of at least a couple, children that were killed.
Mhm. Right. Yeah, I understand that, but at the same time, you said earlier that Hezbollah is not an official army or fighting force. It's a civilian
It's both. It's
militia.
both. Right.
It's right, which gives it this gray area. Then, like, well, how are you supposed to combat this type of thing if they are part of their communities? They are part.
Hmm.
So I'm just trying to play devil's advocate here. If I was from the Israeli point of view, at least I was afraid of them carpet bombing Beirut or
Yeah. Well, they
Rumi,
may
which
do
they may
that.
still do it. They may
Yeah. Well,
still
the
do
thing
it.
is, they've done things like that in the past in Lebanon, and so yeah. I mean, this is horrific, but it's really no more horrific than things that Israel has done, and it's probably less horrific and has less military or more military justification than a lot of previous operations in Lebanon, and
Right.
certainly in Gaza, without
Right,
question, in
exactly.
Gaza.
That's the way I'm looking.
Right.
I see it.
Right.
I mean,
I
I'm
have
like,
to
well,
say
at
that.
least they are target. These were pagers that they know were being used for communications amongst Hezbollah members, and so in that sense, it was quite targeted. Obviously,
Uh-huh.
that these people are going about the city with their families and whatever. So, that's horrific. But then, if you are from the Israeli point of view, they're thinking, well, we got to take out Hezbollah. In that
Hmm.
sense, it was actually rather ingenious.
Right.
I
Yeah,
don't
no, it
like
does.
giving the Israeli credit, but
Yeah,
I feel
right.
like I want to be
Yeah.
impartial and
No,
look
no,
at.
I agree. This is not something I don't think consider this like some people have tried to paint it as particularly barbaric, but again, compared to so much, it's just not barbaric compared to what we've seen in Gaza, which clearly is just genocidal. I mean, just going after civilians, destroying their hospitals, and killing them in Israeli declared safe zones, and
Right.
right, we've seen that. Or you just take an example of that hostage rescue. What they rescue a handful of hostages and kill a couple hundred Palestinian civilians in the process. I mean, when you compare it to this is sort of like everyday life in Gaza, and then this actually made some military sense. It was cruel. It was we couldn't call it surgical. It clearly involved a lot of civilian casualties, but you have to say it is the kind of thing that happens in war.
Hmm.
I can't think of anything like similar that the Russians have done. There's if they did, I think there would be a huge hue and cry about it. Even if it did clearly have a military target, and I don't think the Russians would. But this is sort of like within a gray area of what sort of things that happen in the war, and I think the U.S. has done similar things in the past.
Right. Yeah. The other thing you were mentioning was just saying that this was maybe set off a little prematurely. That there were two theories: that one, you would knock out the communications first and go in for invasion, or rather that they were hoping to wait one after the invasion happened and then do this and cause chaos during the middle of the conflict,
Right.
and give Israel the upper hand. Now that they've done this, do you believe that the invasion is imminent? They like, okay, we've done this. Their communications are knocked out. Now is the time to roll into southern Lebanon.
It does appear to be imminent. It seemed like it was rather imminent even a couple months ago, but I mean,
I
we're
know.
getting more. It's like a greater frequency of like, yeah, this is what we're doing. I think even Gallant, right, who's maybe on the chopping block, as you brought up in the last program, right?
Yeah, he's still around, I
But
guess, right?
he's still around, but he's actually saying, yeah, yeah, no, we're shifting from Gaza to Lebanon, and it's just if this rhetoric, the words that we're hearing from Netanyahu and other top leaders mean anything, and I think they do. there is going to be some sort of major attack on Lebanon in the very near future.
Right. I mean, they need to do it fast, right? Because it
Yeah.
won't take long for them to recuperate. They'll get another communication system in place rapidly.
Uh-huh.
So if they want to take advantage of the chaos, you
It's
only
yeah,
have
well, quite
maybe
possibly. That's
48
what.
hours, right? I mean,
Right. That seems
I
that
was guessing.
seems that seems like a good guess. Yeah, I'd also say about this. This does okay. You can say this was a cruel, a ruthless but effective attack and ingenious attack
Mhm.
by the Israelis. But it does have, I think, potentially a big downside. And one is, well, just the fact they used a civilian um, electronics company to do this. First of all, raises some huge liability issues. I mean, quite seriously, you say this product was used to kill, a dozen people and injure thousands. There's got to be some enormous liability there. And I think inevitably, if it goes to the courts, I don't know where it would. Maybe it could, be in Europe. The fingers get pointed at Mossad and Israel in general. And again, it's, they'll never pay the price, but it does again shine a light on them. Um, and but I think secondly, as I think it was Craig Murray pointed out, said this could have potentially really have a negative impact on Israeli manufacturers. He's just thinking that okay, this was in fact a Taiwanese company, right? But it's just like it's going to be hard to sell Israeli electronic devices, and
Yeah,
people are
right.
just
No, I'm
going to
not
wonder.
using them.
Yeah, right. Well, there was already an issue. I mean, I've heard this going years back about Israeli software, like that they
Malware,
always
right?
had. Right, they always have a
Trojans
backdoor in
and
there. They use it. There's use it to collect information on U.S. citizens, and so that was already there. But this is just it just has to create a lot of paranoia, right, about anything that's made in Israel. Because they say, well, is the Mossad involved in this? This, or any company that has some sort of association with Israel, or whether it's
hmm
just going to. Potentially, in the long run, it could actually be very damaging to Israel.
right. I mean, how we're even recording this thing right now, I was using Spotify podcasters, and I think they switched over to using this third party Riverside, which saw later on that is based in Tel Aviv, and I'm like, uh-oh. Do we need to switch to something else for our podcast now?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Well, yeah. I mean, it's not completely. It's been shown that their software companies have done this. It's kind of it's a well known fact.
Okay, well, we'll
Yeah.
talk about that
Yeah.
after this
Okay.
this episode. See what we need to do. Well, what is Hezbollah's response been to this so far? Have they promised some type of
Yes,
retribution?
they have. That's as far as I know, that's what they've said. There will be retaliation for it, and we'll see what happens.
Okay, great. So we got
Yeah.
another one. So
And
this is imploding. This situation in the Middle East is on a collision course right now. I mean, there's no. We have the Iran retaliation. We have things escalating
right.
in
And
southern
again, the
Lebanon.
Iranian ambassador was very severely injured. They say can describe him as critically injured. I guess he could even die. So Iran also suffered in this attack.
Okay, well, it sounds like it's going to pop off. Who once it goes, we can't really make any predictions. But I imagine there will be some type of coordinated rocket attack from Hezbollah, potentially the Houthis as well.